The day I buried my mother, I came home to strangers in her house, laughing in her kitchen like they owned the place. The curtains were wrong, the furniture was wrong. Everything was wrong. And someone I trusted made it happen. They thought I would cry. They thought I would walk away. But I'm a Texan. I don't walk. I reload. They took what was mine. So I took everything they thought they had built. You don't mess with family, and you sure as hell don't mess with me. Before we begin, hit subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if someone sold your inheritance while you were at a funeral? There's a sound a person makes when they're betrayed by someone they still love. It's not a scream. It's not a sob. It's silence. A silence so dense it swallows everything around it, thoughts, breath, reason. That's the sound I made when I walked into my mother's house the day after we buried her and saw a grey sectional couch where her worn floral armchair used to sit. My boots clicked against the entry tile. She'd never had the money to replace. It was cracked in the corner. She always joked she'd cover it with a rug once Mark pays me back for that fishing trip he conned me into. He never did. I stopped in the living room and blinked. There was a woman, mid-30s, maybe younger, with the face of someone who drinks celery juice unironically, unpacking dishes onto my mother's kitchen counter. A man with a lumberjack beard and ironic suspenders was arranging artwork on the walls. Artwork. On her walls. My mother's walls. I was still wearing the black dress from the funeral. I hadn't eaten since the church served bland ham sandwiches in foil trays. My throat was dry and my skin smelled like grief and boxed lilies. "Can I help you?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. The woman turned, startled but not apologetic. "Oh, you must be Sarah. Mark said you might swing by." Swing by. Like I was a guest in my own mother's home. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" She smiled, the way people smile when they think you're stupid but don't want to say it out loud. "I'm Talia. This is Evan. We just closed on the house yesterday. Mark was great. He made the process so easy." The words dropped one by one into my gut, like coins into a rigged slot machine. "You... what?" We bought the house. Everything was finalized this morning. The deeds already recorded with the county. The couch, the voices, the laughter I heard walking up the driveway. I thought it was just neighbors being nosy. I thought I still owned this place. I thought wrong. I didn't say anything. I turned and left. My heels sunk into the front lawn like it was trying to hold me in place. I called Mark from the car. He picked up on the second ring, like he'd been waiting for this call. "Cuz, you okay? Rough day, huh? I meant to text you. You sold Mum's house." He didn't deny it. "Technically, yes. I expedited the process. It was sitting there, probate limbo, and you've got enough on your plate. I figured I'd take something off." He spoke like he was doing me a favor, like I should say thank you. "You forged my name." No, not forged. Just pre-authorized. I had access to some of the estate docs from back when I helped her with the roof thing, grey area stuff, and you know how slow the courts are. The roof thing, the grey area. The arrogance in his voice made my jaw ache. "You sold the house without my consent. That's illegal, Mark. Not if you squint." I could hear his beer crack open over the line. He was celebrating. "She wouldn't have wanted it to rot on the market," he added casually. "And let's be honest, Sarah, you're not exactly a real estate wizard. You probably would have wasted the money." That was when I stopped shaking. I stopped breathing for a second. I stared at the for sale sign, now flipped to sold, half torn in the front yard. The hydrangeas Mum babied every spring were already trampled by moving vans. Her wind chime, shaped like tiny ceramic owls, was gone. "I'm calling a lawyer," Mark laughed. "Oh no, not the lawyer," he said, mocking a gasp. "You think I didn't cover my tracks? I've got friends at the county recorder's office. Mitch paid cash. It's a done deal." "You're a thief." "I'm family." He hung up, just like that, and there I was, still in my funeral dress, standing outside the home my mother raised me in, while strangers picked out where to hang their flat screen. I don't remember driving to the law office. I don't remember signing the paperwork. I don't even remember crying. What I do remember is this. There was a ceramic angel on the living room mantel. One wing chipped. She'd had it for decades. Said it reminded her, nothing stays perfect, but it can still protect you. I stole it. Right in front of them. Walked in, said nothing, took the angel, and left. I needed something to carry the weight of what I was about to do, because Mark thought he'd won. But he forgot one thing. I'm a Texan. We don't go down easy, we don't forget. But he forgot one thing. I'm a Texan. We don't go down easy, we don't forget. And when you come for our blood, we always come back swinging. You don't have to do this alone, Mark had said, his arm slung around my shoulder, a little too heavy to feel like comfort. It was 3 weeks before my mother died. Hospice had just installed the hospital bed in her living room. The same living room where I'd opened Christmas presents in my footy pajamas, where she used to blast Patsy Cline while cooking chicken pot pie from scratch. Now it smelled like bleach and defeat. The nurse gave me a pamphlet called Letting Go with Grace. Mark, meanwhile, had shown up with 2 bags of lukewarm takeout and a 6-pack of beer. He set them on the counter like this was a barbecue, not a death watch. She's like a second mum to me, Sarah. I'd never let anything happen to her. Or to what she built. I remember nodding, too tired to think straight. I'd been up the night before, holding Mum's hand, while she gasped through a coughing fit that didn't stop for almost an hour. I mean it, Mark continued. I can help take the pressure off. The bills, the paperwork, taxes, deed stuff. You shouldn't have to deal with that while you're, saying goodbye. He sounded so sincere, like the cousin who once gave me his last roll of Lifesavers at age 8 when I cried over a skinned knee. So when he handed me a paper labelled Temporary Executor Authorization, I signed it. Did I read it? Barely. I was busy memorising the way Mum's chest rose and fell, wondering how many more times I'd get to see it happen. He put the papers in his messenger bag, patted my shoulder and said, "You just focus on being her daughter. I'll handle the boring stuff." And I believed him. That was the last time I mistook cowardice for kindness. 3 weeks later, I stood in my kitchen, same funeral dress, same aching heart, and opened my laptop like it was a weapon. The cursor blinked at me, waiting. So I opened a new spreadsheet and typed 3 words across the top. Mark's paper trail. The angel statue I'd rescued from Mom's mantel sat beside my trackpad, her chipped wing facing me like a battle scar. I wasn't just documenting crimes. I was building an obituary for Mark's fake life. I started with his company, Fletch Built. Nice branding. Very masculine. Very Texas. The website was slick, full of buzzwords like locally trusted, integrity-driven, and committed to quality craftsmanship. There was even a video of Mark shaking hands with a city councilman in front of a public library he apparently helped renovate. What the site didn't show. The city's open complaints page, where that same library had failed inspection due to non-compliant fire exits and exposed wiring. Mark's signature was on the contractor permit. Next stop, his Better Business Bureau page. 2 unresolved disputes. One from a single mum in Fort Worth who paid $6,800 for a backyard deck that was never finished. The other from a veteran who claimed Mark used salvaged materials after quoting him for brand new. I screenshotted everything and pasted the links into my spreadsheet. I created tabs. Tab 1, Fraudulent Invoices. Tab 2, Unfinished Projects. Tab, Fabricated Reviews. Tab 4, Emotional Leverage. Timeline. That last one? That was just for me. A place to write out every lie he told, every time he looked me in the eye while chiseling away at my trust, every moment he leaned on our family name to justify his betrayal. Then came the email. Buried in an old thread from Mark was a forwarded message chain between him and Mitch Flanders, the new owner of my mother's house. Timestamp 2:17 a.m., 3 days before the funeral. She's emotionally wrecked. Signature's already done. If we move quickly, we can record before she realizes anything's missing. Buyer name goes under emergency trust transfer. County clerk's a friend. Should be clean. I read that line 5 times. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I did. Mark hadn't just stolen from me. He planned it. while my mother was still alive, still breathing, still fighting for her last few days with dignity. That was the moment I felt something. Snap. Like an old belt pulled too tight for too long. Mark hadn't just crossed a line, he took a bulldozer to it, paved it, and called it a shortcut, and he thought I wouldn't notice. He must have forgotten what Texans are made of. I don't burn bridges, I build canyons. That night, I poured a glass of wine, cheap, red, bitter, and pulled up my notes app. I typed the name of every person who might have dirt on Mark. Aunt Marianne, who paid him $12K for a sunroom that now leaks into her sewing room. Tina Goodwin, his former receptionist who once posted, "Some men use tools, some just are tools." Gary Mathis, a former client who got sued after Mark's faulty roof collapsed during a storm. I reached out to each of them, carefully one by one. Marianne answered on the first ring. "Oh, baby," she said, her voice already shaking. "Yeah, you found out." She'd known something was wrong. Mark told her not to talk to me, that I was fragile after Mum passed. But I knew he was up to something. I just didn't think he'd go that far. She emailed me everything. Invoices, before and after photos, complaint letters. Tina sent me a flash drive. "It's encrypted," she wrote. "Keep my name out of it, but I'm done protecting him." Inside the drive, screenshots of doctored invoices, labour padding, and a folder marked Ghost Crew, a list of fake subcontractors used to inflate costs. By midnight, I had receipts, records, and rage. But I needed firepower, so I opened a new email. To Erin Cho. Subject: Local contractor committing fraud on city projects. I have proof. I attached a zip file with everything. Files from Tina, screenshots from Mitch's messages, and a list of homeowners who'd been screwed over by Fletchbuilt. Then I wrote 3 simple sentences. He sold a widow's home behind her daughter's back. He's stealing from your city. And he's hiding behind a pillar of the community mask. I didn't sign it. Let her wonder. Then I clicked send. And for the first time since Mum took her last breath, I inhaled like I wanted to live again. There's something satisfying about baiting a trap for someone who thinks they're too smart to get caught. Mark had always thought of himself as street smart. The kind of man who dropped out of community college after one semester and claimed it was because he was too ambitious for that bureaucratic crap. He wore his ignorance like a badge, said things like, "Real money's in grit, not grades, and permits are just red tape for people without tools." The truth? He never filed permits because it gave him plausible deniability when the work fell apart. Which is exactly why I made the first lever I'd pull. 2 days after sending the evidence to Channel 8, I created a Gmail address under the name Jessica Kane. Jessica Kane was a freelance journalist working on a feature about ethical construction in North Texas suburbs. She had a neutral accent, a dog named Copper, and a fake LinkedIn profile with just enough vague buzzwords to look legitimate. Her first email was to Mitch Flanders. "Hi, Mitch. I'm working on a human interest piece about ethical builders and community-driven contractors. I'd love to highlight your recent home purchase and your experience with Fletchbuilt. I understand Mark Fletcher handled your transaction. If you're open to a quick call, I'd love to chat. Best," Jessica Mitch replied in under 30 minutes. "Hey, Jessica, sure thing. Love Mark. He made everything super smooth. Guy's a legend around here. Call me anytime." Legend. Right. I scheduled a call for the next day and listened as Mitch practically swooned through the Bluetooth speaker in my car. "I didn't even need to get the inspector involved," he said proudly, as if dodging regulations made him savvy. Mark said he had someone on the inside who handles that stuff. Bingo. I recorded every word using an app I'd downloaded the night before. When I asked about the closing documents, Mitch offered to send them. "Transparency's important, right?" "Yes, Mitch. It's everything." That night, I received a PDF with the title transfer, payment record, and a renovation addendum signed by Mark with one crucial detail missing. No permit number, no inspection record. Just a line that said, "Work completed under trust-based internal inspection." Trust-based. Even typing it made me laugh. I passed the document on to Erin Cho from Channel 8, who replied within 10 minutes. "No permit for major work? That's City Code violation 814. This just got very interesting. She asked to speak with me. I said no. Anonymity was still my best weapon. Instead, I kept digging. I reached out to Gary Mathis, a retired Army vet who'd written a furious Yelp review of Fletchbuilt in all caps. Gary was a straight shooter, said things like, "I may be old, but I'm not stupid, and that man wouldn't know a stud beam from a 2x4 if it bit him." He told me about a carport job Mark did last spring that collapsed under mild wind. Turns out the supports were nailed into plaster, not the frame. "It could have killed someone," Gary said. "I sent photos to the city, but they said the job didn't exist in their records." Another missing permit. Another crack in the foundation. Gary sent me the photos. I passed them on to Erin. The next morning, I woke up to a Channel 8 alert. Local contractor under scrutiny for unsafe construction practices, fraudulent paperwork. And right there, on the 6 a.m. teaser, was a photo of Mark smiling in front of the city library with the caption, "Caught cutting corners." I sipped my coffee and smiled for the first time in days. He didn't know it yet, but the ceiling was about to collapse. Mark called me at 10:22 a.m. I didn't answer. Then came the text. "Mark, you seen the news?" Erin chose digging. "You talked to her?" I stared at the message for a minute, then replied with 2 words, "Not yet." A minute passed, then 5. "Mark, she's got stuff from my clients. You need to shut this down. This affects all of us. All of us." As if I had sold a house behind someone's back during a funeral. Then came the real tell. "Mark, you think this is revenge, but you're burning your family. Think about what Mum would have wanted." That line? That was poison in a greeting card. I could almost hear his voice, hear him smirking, hear him trying to spin it all back into my fault. But the only thing I heard louder was the sound of my mother's oxygen machine the night before she passed, puffing, sighing, filling the space between her words as she whispered, "Watch your cousin. He always wants something." I watched, and now I was done watching. I was ready to act. 2 nights later, I met with someone I hadn't spoken to in years. David Klein, a city inspector I dated once in my 20s before he got married and I moved to Austin. He owed me nothing, but when I texted, "Can I ask you something off the record?" he replied, "I still owe you a drink. Make it 2 questions." We met in a downtown bar. It smelled like old leather and lemon rind. I showed him the Fletchbuilt renovation addendum. He scanned it, eyebrows rising. "No city seal, no approval code. This is trash. Can you confirm that?" He hesitated. "Are you still recording everything?" I held up my phone. "Voice memos only, this is private." He leaned in. "If this aired on the news, he'd lose his license." "He already might." David finished his drink, set it down with a finality I recognized. "Whatever you're doing, be careful. Guys like Mark, they don't go down quietly." I smiled. Neither do women like me. By the end of the week, Channel 8 aired part 1 of Erin's exposé. The man behind Fletchbuilt. Is he building trust, or just taking your money? The city placed stop work notices on 2 of Mark's active projects. The mayor's office issued a formal inquiry into Fletchbuilt's city contract for a rec centre expansion. And Mark? He posted a Facebook status the next morning. "Too many haters trying to tear down what honest men build with their hands. I know who I am. God knows who I am. That's enough." Translation? He was panicking. And this? This was just the first hammer swing. Fantastic. Now that Sarah has struck the first public blow and shaken Mark's business and reputation, Chapter 4 is where she turns the pressure up, not just with legal evidence, but with social exposure. The goal now? Mark must feel watched, vulnerable, and surrounded. Sarah's not just going after his permits. She's coming for the one thing that men like Mark depend on more than money: their image. Mark always cared more about appearances than reality. His house looked like it belonged in a home improvement magazine. But the plumbing knocked, the garage door stuck, and the deck sagged like a tired parent. His Facebook page was a curated altar to himself. Photos with veterans at fundraisers, him handing out water bottles at food drives, an entire album titled "Serving My Community." Never mind that one of the veterans had later sued him, or that the food drive was sponsored by a church he hadn't attended in a decade. He was the kind of man who believed optics were more powerful than truth. And he wasn't wrong, until I made the truth impossible to ignore. The Channel 8 segment aired a week ago. And the ripple effect was glorious. Mark's phone had probably been ringing off the hook with loyal clients, demanding refunds. His inbox, full of just wanted to follow up on that invoice. Messages from people suddenly remembering they were owed money. He posted twice about false media narratives and cancel culture coming for hard-working contractors. Then he went quiet. But quiet is just a storm catching its breath. So I gave it something to scream about. I created a second fake identity. Samantha Gray, an events coordinator with a local non-profit, organising a gala for community builders and city influencers. Samantha had a logo, a mission statement, and a pretty convincing Eventbrite page for a fictional evening called Legacies That Last, Honouring Those Who Build Our Future. It was fake. But the guest list wasn't. Every name on it was real. The mayor's assistant, a city inspector, 2 local journalists, a donor who funded Mark's last project. I sent out e-invites to each of them, posing as Samantha. Then, on a Thursday morning, I sent one directly to Mark. Subject line, "You're nominated for a Legacy Award." His response came 2 hours later. "Wow, this means the world. I've poured everything into this city, can't wait to attend." Of course he couldn't. He needed to prove he still mattered, that he hadn't been reduced to some washed-up fraud fumbling through damage control. The gala was scheduled 2 weeks out, and I had no intention of hosting it. I just needed the buzz. And I needed one photograph. I dressed up the next day and visited one of Mark's current job sites, an unfinished 2-story property in a newer neighbourhood called Rosewick Glen. He didn't know I was coming. I wore sunglasses, a ponytail, and carried a clipboard. "City observation walk," I said to a man unloading lumber. "Compliance check." He barely blinked. "Mark's inside." Perfect. The front door was open, the drywall unfinished, the stairs loud enough to announce me before I even spoke. Mark turned around mid-conversation with his crew, half smiling, then frowned. "Do I know you?" "You will," I said, and snapped a photo with my phone. The flash startled him. That's when he recognized my voice. "Sarah?" I didn't answer, just smiled, turned, and left, leaving behind the echo of my heels and his stuttering confusion. That photo, it wasn't for social media. It was for my next leak. I packaged the image, Mark caught in work boots, hair greasy, face mid-grimace, and emailed it anonymously to the Spokesman Times, Spokane's local print paper. Attached were fresh documents, screenshots of Facebook reviews he had written for himself, chat logs between Mitch and Mark about bypassing a foundation permit, an invoice showing custom cabinetry, charged $3,500 for a particle board. The subject line? Community hero or corner-cutting fraud? 2 days later, the Times ran a Sunday exposé. Behind the curtain, questions mount, around contractor Mark Fletcher's public persona. Beneath the headline, that same photo I had taken, cropped and zoomed, showing Mark mid-sneer, holding a beer-stained blueprint, standing on uneven floorboards. The article shredded his reputation with surgical precision. They quoted 3 anonymous sources. All of them were me. He called again. I didn't answer, but I did read his texts. "Mark, what the hell is going on? You're feeding them lies? I thought we were family." "I helped your mother." "Me." "You helped yourself. To her house, to her deathbed paperwork, to her trust." He didn't respond right away. Then, "Mark, you're bitter and dramatic. You think this is justice. This is a circus. You're turning grief into a PR stunt." I stared at that text for a while, and for a moment, a fraction of a second, I felt a pang. He was family. We had built blanket forts together, snuck Oreos after bedtime, danced at my mother's wedding to Willie Nelson. But people change, and sometimes they rot. Aunt Marianne called me 2 days later. "Baby," she said, "I saw the paper." Her voice was fragile, like tissue soaked in rain. "I knew he was reckless, but I didn't know how far he'd gone. Are you okay?" "I'm working through it." There was a pause, then. "Your mama would have been proud of you. You're doing what she couldn't." That nearly broke me. Because I remembered the night Mum told me I always wanted to stand up to him, but he's got a way of making people feel guilty just for expecting decency. Not anymore. Mark's name was now tarnished in every city corner that once praised him. His contractors, quitting. His suppliers, late on shipments. His legacy award gala, never happening. But the invitations still sat on his fridge like a participation trophy for a game he'd already lost. The final blow came quietly. Erin Cho emailed me one line. "I've confirmed your whistleblower. The city will be issuing fraud citations next week. No fanfare, no explosion, just paperwork. But for Mark, that was a death sentence. Because when you live for attention, silence is the loudest punishment of all. I wore my mother's brooch to court. It was gold, shaped like a Texas bluebonnet, small enough to miss if you were distracted, but unforgettable if you knew what to look for. She used to wear it to church, to weddings, to every meeting where she knew she'd be underestimated. She called it her armor, said it reminded her that she was still her, even when people treated her like she wasn't enough. That day, I pinned it to my collarbone like a badge, because I wasn't walking into that courthouse as a grieving daughter. I wasn't even walking in as a whistleblower. I was walking in as every woman who's ever been robbed of something sacred, and told to be polite about it. The parking lot was half empty when I arrived. The courthouse was one of those squat brick buildings they put in towns that don't quite know if they're suburbs or cities, too big for charm, too small for grandeur. Inside, the walls were pale grey, the kind of colour that looks like regret after a thunderstorm. The waiting area was quiet. Just me, a man with a neck tattoo, a woman whispering into a phone about child custody. I sat down in the second row, straight-backed, hands folded. At 9:12 a.m, Mark walked in. He didn't see me at first. He was wearing a suit that didn't fit anymore. The sleeves too short, the collar digging into his neck. He looked older, deflated. For the first time in my life, Mark Fletcher looked like a man who was about to lose. He turned, laughing nervously with his lawyer. When his eyes landed on me, he froze. I smiled. Not wide, not cruel. Just enough to say I am here. I survived you. And I'm not afraid of you anymore. His lawyer whispered something. He didn't respond, just looked away. The court clerk called the room to order. The hearing was dry, bureaucratic. Half an hour of administrative procedures and evidence summaries. Mark was being sued by the buyers of my mother's house, Mitch and Talia, who had discovered in painful detail that they had bought a home from someone who had no legal right to sell it. They'd received a formal fraud notice from the county 2 weeks ago. Talia had posted about it on Facebook, tagging Mark, tagging Fletchbuilt, tagging the mayor. It went viral. 1,200 shares. Mark had since deleted his account. Now here he was, facing a formal civil suit for fraudulent conveyance and contract misrepresentation. He pleaded not guilty. His lawyer tried to argue that Mark believed he had implicit authority and had acted in what he perceived to be the estate's best interest. The judge wasn't buying it. Her mouth pulled into a tight line, as if she'd seen too many men like him and had lost patience with each one. She scheduled a full trial for next month, granted a temporary injunction on all of Mark's assets, ordered a stop payment freeze on his accounts. The words came slow, official, heavy with finality. And Mark? He didn't say a word, didn't look at me again, until the hearing ended. As the courtroom emptied, I stayed seated, calm, collected. I wanted him to feel it, the silence, the tension, the weight of my presence. He approached cautiously, hands in pockets like a boy caught sneaking cigarettes behind the gym. "Sarah," he said quietly, "you didn't have to come." "I wanted to," I replied. "I like watching the truth get spoken aloud." He ran a hand through his hair, less styled now, more panicked. "This whole thing's been blown out of proportion. I never meant to hurt you." "You sold my mother's house, I said, voice flat, "while I was at her funeral." "That's not what happened." "No? Then what happened, Mark? Did the documents forge themselves? Did the email to Mitch send itself?" His eyes dropped. He didn't answer. "I told you before," I continued. "You don't mess with Texans. And you sure as hell don't mess with their mothers. He looked up then, eyes small and watery. You don't understand what it's like. I was drowning. Business dried up. I needed to make a move. You made your move. Now I've made mine. He exhaled like a man who finally realized the house is already on fire. What do you want, Sarah? I paused. What did I want? I wanted him to feel what I felt, shocked, betrayed, helpless. I wanted him to sit in the quiet of an empty house and wonder if he would ever feel like himself again. But mostly I wanted him to know. He had finally met someone he couldn't outsmart, outtalk, or outmaneuver. So I stepped closer, looked him dead in the eyes, and I said, You took my home. I took your whole life. He flinched, like the words hit harder than any punch could. I walked out before he could say another word. Outside, the sun was soft and golden, the air cool with late spring. I stood on the courthouse steps for a moment, breathing it in. Then I opened my phone and texted Erin Cho. He's officially on trial. Stop work orders confirmed. Next up, license suspension. She replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji. Simple. Perfect. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the same one I'd once cried at while holding a forged deed, and poured myself a glass of whiskey. The bluebonnet brooch lay on the counter beside my laptop. I stared at it for a moment, then smiled. Mum always said, revenge is for small minds, but justice is holy. She'd never lived to see this day, but somehow I think she already knew it was coming. I raised my glass to the chipped angel statue on the shelf across the room. To justice, I whispered. And I meant it. Mark's life didn't collapse all at once. It crumbled, like a slow-motion implosion you couldn't look away from, one jagged piece at a time. The first chunk fell when the judge froze his accounts. The second came 3 days later, when the city revoked his business license. Fletch Built, once the most trusted name in residential construction, according to Mark's homemade flyers, was suddenly blacklisted. Suppliers stopped taking his calls. A post appeared on Nextdoor titled, Warning, do not hire Fletch Built. Fraud. Fake permits. News link attached. Within 72 hours, it had 162 comments. Most of them were horror stories. He charged me $15,000 and never finished the roof. Our custom cabinets peeled after 2 months. He yelled at my wife when she asked why our plumbing stank. Even the church he once posed with for photos issued a statement. Mark Fletcher is not affiliated with our ministry in any official capacity. He was radioactive. No clients, no cash flow, no cover story. And for the first time since the funeral, I let myself sleep without white noise. A week after the hearing, I received an envelope from my lawyer. Inside was a single-page letter with a bold header. Voided title transfer. 129 Walnut Ridge, Lane. That was my mother's address. Our home. The fraudulent sale had officially been reversed. The deed, the ownership, the keys, all back in my name. I reread the letter 3 times. Then I drove straight to the house. The lawn was overgrown, the hydrangeas wilted. The front door still had Mitch's sticker on the mailbox. The Flanders family, established 2025. I ripped it off with the kind of care usually reserved for opening a bandage. Fast, quiet, final. Inside, everything was wrong. The air smelled like lemon-scented cleaning spray instead of lavender and cedarwood. The walls were painted grey. Generic grey. My mother had hated grey. Said it made homes feel like waiting rooms for bad news. I walked from room to room, touching counters, doorknobs, drawer pulls. In the hallway closet, I found one of her old scarves shoved in the back. I held it to my face. It still smelled like her. I collapsed onto the floor, knees tucked under me, and cried for the first time since this whole thing began. Not angry tears, not sad ones either. Just release. I had taken the hit. I had absorbed the betrayal, and now I had taken everything back, with interest. The next day, I made a to-do list. Repaint the living room. Replace the curtains with Mom's originals. Trim the hydrangeas. Change the locks. I called a locksmith named Julio. He arrived within an hour and greeted me like an old friend. "Good to see this place back where it belongs," he said, not even asking what happened. "Your mama was a good woman." I tipped him double. That night, I slept in my old bedroom. The mattress was different, the sheets didn't match, but the feeling was the same. It was the first place I'd ever felt safe, and now it was safe again. 2 weeks later, I heard Mark had filed for bankruptcy. He tried to negotiate a reduced payment plan with Mitch and Talia. They refused. Their lawyer filed a second suit, this one backed by the Attorney General's Office for Criminal Misrepresentation. Apparently, Mark's emergency trust transfer trick had been used before. They were just the first ones who'd fought back. He owed over $18,000 in judgments, plus interest, plus legal fees. And in order to pay them, he had to sell his own house, the one he bragged about during every Thanksgiving, the one with the pool he never cleaned, the one where he once told my mother, "We finally made it." Gone. Listed publicly. Marketed as a motivated seller opportunity. I saw the listing on Zillow, screenshotted it, laughed. Mark was now living in a one-bedroom rental on the edge of town, above a discount pet supply store. How poetic. I didn't gloat, not publicly. I didn't post about it, didn't tag him, didn't rant. I just lived. I used the money I'd saved to restore the house room by room. I hired local contractors, the real kind, to fix what Fletch Built had destroyed. I planted fresh roses, put up new shutters, hung Mum's angel figurine on the mantel, right where it had always belonged. One morning, I opened a box I'd almost thrown out months ago. Inside was her recipe binder, handwritten cards, smudged ink, notes in the margins like, "Add paprika if Mark's coming. He never notices but swears it tastes better." I laughed. Then I made the enchiladas, real ones, the kind you cook slowly while the house fills with the smell of garlic and cumin and things no seasoning packet can replicate. When they were done, I sat at the table, alone, content, and said out loud, she always said, "Don't get mad, get even." I just made sure to get even, with interest. I raised my glass of cold sweet tea to no one in particular. Then I took a bite. It tasted like home. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday, unassuming, cream-coloured, with my name scrawled across the front in handwriting I hadn't seen since Mum's 60th birthday party. Invitations. Mark's handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No header, no logo, just, "You've made your point. Now stop." I stared at it for a long time. No apology, no ownership, no remorse. Just those 5 words, like I was the problem. Not the forged documents, not the illegal sale, not the stolen home, the lies, the years of manipulation. Just me, standing up. That, apparently, was the real crime. I folded the letter back up and slid it into a drawer beneath the sink, right next to the emergency batteries and rubber bands that never fit anything. That was where he belonged now, out of sight, filed under useless. A week passed, then another. The garden began to bloom again, slowly, stubbornly. The hydrangeas were late this year. I wasn't surprised. They always took their time coming back after trauma. So did I. I spent my mornings repainting the porch swing, my evenings watching the sun bleed into the horizon like it was finally ready to rest. Then late one Friday afternoon, I got the call. It was from the office of Judge Helen Wexley, the same no-nonsense woman who'd overseen Mark's hearing. "Ms. Foster," said the clerk, "you're entitled to be present at the restitution ruling next Thursday should you wish." Restitution. That was the word. Not revenge. Not karma. Restitution. The legal system's way of acknowledging that something had been taken, and it was time to start putting it back. I thanked her, hung up, and circled the date on my calendar. One final act. One final seat at the front row. Thursday arrived in its best courtroom grey. I wore navy again. Pressed, clean, deliberate. Mum's bluebonnet brooch on my collar. No makeup this time. No need for armour anymore. I didn't need to hide grief behind blush. Grief had left the building. Only resolve remained. Courtroom 3B was already half full when I arrived. Talia and Mitch were in the front, stiff-backed and smug. Mark sat 2 rows behind them alone. He looked thinner, his face drawn, hands fidgeting. No lawyer this time. He hadn't been able to afford one after the second lawsuit hit. His expression when I entered said everything. He hadn't expected me to come, hadn't expected me to look him in the eye again, but I did. I nodded. Once, calm, measured. He looked away. The judge entered at 10:02 a.m. The bailiff called for silence, and the ruling began. Judge Wexley's voice was like gravel wrapped in velvet, rough but deliberate. Mark Fletcher is hereby ordered to pay full restitution to the estate of Margaret Foster in the amount of $218,000. That was the calculated total of the fraudulent home sale, court fees, damages due to reputational harm, and, because fate has a sense of humour, the cost of restoring the home to its original state. Mark's mouth twitched at that one. I could almost hear him thinking, she kept the damn house and I still have to pay. Yes, Mark, that's how restitution works. You don't just give back what you stole, you pay interest. The judge paused. Then she added something that nearly made me laugh out loud. Furthermore, the defendant is barred from engaging in any real estate transactions, construction services, or housing development contracts for a period of 10 years pending approval by this court. 10 years. Longer than he'd ever held a real job. Long enough for the world to forget his name and for his ego to suffocate from the lack of attention. When the hearing ended, Mark turned as if to say something, but I stood first, and I walked straight past him, heels clicking like a gavel. I didn't need words. Not anymore. The truth had already spoken on my behalf. Outside, the air was cool and still. I stood on the steps for a while watching the clouds shift, not thinking, just absorbing. I'd won. Not loudly, not explosively, but completely. Mark hadn't just lost a legal case. He'd lost the version of himself he had sold to the world for years. The good guy, the hard-working contractor, the family man. And I hadn't screamed. I hadn't stooped. I'd just told the truth. And let the consequences do their work. 2 weeks later, I got a voicemail from a blocked number. It was short. I hope you're proud of yourself. You destroyed me. I lost everything. I replayed it twice, then deleted it. He was wrong. I didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself. I just turned the lights on. On the anniversary of Mum's passing, I invited a few neighbours over for dinner. Nothing fancy. Just peach cobbler brisket and her famous iced tea, brewed strong and sweet enough to cure heartbreak. After everyone left, I sat on the porch swing barefoot, watching lightning bugs blink across the yard. The house behind me glowed like it had when I was 10, warm, full of laughter, and safe. A sound behind me made me turn. Rosa, our old neighbour, stepped onto the porch with a dish towel in hand. She looked around the yard, nodding. She'd be proud, you know. I smiled. I hope so. She leaned against the railing. You didn't just get justice, Sarah. You reclaimed something. I nodded. Yeah, I said softly. My voice, my roots, my mother's legacy. I looked down at the brooch still pinned to my blouse. She told me once, I said, that forgiveness is a choice, but so is remembering who you are. Rosa tilted her head. And who are you now? I took a deep breath. Someone who's finally free.